I grew up in a very specific point in history and geographically and sociogeographically. It was Israel. I was born 1950. I grew up in the 50s, 1950s and 1960s. This was time that Israel in 1948, 1950 was a tiny, tiny nation, 400,000 people. By the time the year 67, there were 2.5 million people. So the nation grew up in 15 years from 400,000 to 2.5 million. All of them immigrants. It's not natural birth. Natural. So 400,000 and suddenly another 2 million of immigrants coming from all over the world. Any country that you can imagine. We came from Poland. My neighbors came from Morocco, from Syria, from Iraq, from Russia, from South America, from any place in the world that you can imagine. So I grew up, those were especially, after the war. Jews came after the Second World War. So I grew up in a society that had so many different cultures, so many different languages. I heard so many different languages. I smelled so many different type of food, cooking, and it was amazing. And ideologies, now we are talking about the ideologies. There was the big Communist Party, Socialist Party, liberal, capitalist, nationalist. So in Israel, in every election, we have like 16 different parties with 16 different point of views, ideologies. And in between religious people, religious parties, culturally, we were influenced by many of those things. We would see in Israel, as a kid, we would see, of course, American movie westerns, we'll see Italian movies on the same level, Indian movies from India, Egyptian movies from Egypt, Iranian cinema, all kind of different cultures, so you'll see West Side Story in one hand, some melodrama from Egypt on the other hand, or from Turkey. Turkey is famous for the melodramas. Italian, Spanish movie from Spain, from Greece, and all of this together. That now we, in general, in the 50s, the general atmosphere, any kid, an Israeli kid that didn't go to a religious school, more or less went to a socialist type of education. The education was socialist. Not communist, but socialist in general, which of course promoted equality. We are all equal, we are all the same. There are no lower class, upper class. So this was the ideology drilled in our brains when we were kids. A little later on, high school, of course, we study, we know about the civil rights movement, we study a lot about the French Revolution, the American Revolution when we went to school. So we know a lot about American because the idealism of democracy were also drilled in our mind. Israel is a true democracy. And so democratic ideas were drilled. So we had to learn French history, American history. So I knew a lot. I knew a lot about slavery. I read about it, but still, when I came here, I was 21 years old. When I came, it's still a cultural shock. No matter how much that comes from a socialist education, from everything is equal, all men are equal. If you work hard, you make it. There is no difference between this food and that food, this skin color, that skin color. Suddenly you come to a society that you see the difference in, and we knew already it was after the 60s. It was 72 when I came, 1972. So yes, this shapes the way I would direct a movie like Avenging Force. No question about it. It will shape my point of view about a group that calls themselves white supremacy, that they think that they are superior to the black inferior. It will shape my point of view. Still, I will not soften this because I'm a storyteller. I tell stories, so I will not take the white supremacy and soften the edge of it to make them look, oh, okay, it's not as bad, it's not as polarized, and let me kind of bring it together. No, as a storyteller, I still want to keep the contrast separate. That's why I was drawn very much to the story Riverbend, to the script of Riverbend, for exactly the same reason.
Riverbend, Georgia, 1966. A timeless community where nothing changes.
There'll be some trouble if you come to town this morning. Buggers, I'm warning you!
You can't just go on killing Negroes. Times have changed. Now, we all know what happened to Marcus. Now, there's the example of a man going to the law. And God damn it, look what happened to him.
Now, come on out here, boy. I want to talk to you.
I'm doing the talking. I'm going to take care of this now.